So I'm going to talk to you today about plants. It's going to be a little bit of a whiz through some of it because I'm so excited about all the projects we're doing. About 5 years ago, we decided to start mashing up plants and see what they do to potassium channels. So we work mostly on voltage-dependent potassium channels, and I'm going to talk today particularly about those in the KV7 or KCNQ family and those in the KV1 family or KCNA family. So KV channels, modulate electrical excitability, and very often when they're disrupted, that can cause hyperexcitability disorders. And we study ways to modulate those. And recently, we studied ways to find small molecules from plants. So I'm going to talk about 3 topics today, looking at some selectivity or between different KCNQ isoforms of plant metabolites, looking at plant metabolites as potential ataxia therapies, and then a dual channel screen of Californian and Caribbean plants. So first up with KCNQs. So we got into plants with some serendipity. We don't have time to go into it now, but maybe a coffee break or something like that. But I'm going to talk to you about, we sometimes screen, just do mass screens with plants, but sometimes, very often, we use indigenous folk medicine practices to guide us. So Coriandrum sativum, which we call coriander in England, or it's called cilantro more often over here, has actually been used in the past as a folk medicine anticonvulsant in Latin America and the Caribbean. And also, its smelly relative, culantro, which has that really great cilantro taste and smell, which I know Mike Halen doesn't like, but because he has the mutation, but I like it. So they both have similar compounds, but they're not that closely related. So we thought, well, this KCNQ23 is the target for retigabine, the first-in-class anticonvulsant that works by opening KCNQ23. We hypothesized that cilantro might actually do that, and we found. This is the way we do. We buy from the supermarket, or we collect in the field. We mash them up with a bead mill. We evaporate off the methanol that we use to do the extraction, and then we have an aqueous extract that we then use to electrovoltage clamp or other screening mechanisms to look at. So when we passed 1 in 100 cilantro that we got from the supermarket over KCNQ2, 3, 4, and 5, we see a nice effect, minus 20 millivolt shift KCNQ2. Not much happening with Q3. This asterisk is the A315T poor mutation that makes Q3 able to pass large currents on its own. Nothing with Q4, and a nice activation of Q5 actually as well. So you see already there's some, even with cilantro, there's some KCNQ isoform selectivity. We worked on previous chemical analysis of cilantro, the top 9 compounds, and you will see this name come up a lot, Rian Manville. He's first author on almost everything I'm going to talk about today, maybe everything. So we'll talk about that at the end. So he tried 9 different compounds using 2 electrovoltage clamp. E2-dodecanol is a fatty aldehyde that caused that minus 20 millivolt shift with an EC50 of 60 nanomolar. Incredibly, one less or one more carbon doesn't do anything. This is KCNQ2-3. So the KCNQ2 effect dominates. E2-dodecanol recapitulates the effects of cilantro. When we did Swiss dock modeling to look at where it might dock, and also mutagenesis, it was found that E2-dodecanol binds down in this GABA/retigabine binding pocket between the S4, between the voltage sensor and the pore down here. And here we see cilantro and E2-dodecanol causing exactly the same effect on KCNQ23. So we think KCNQ23 opening by E2-dodecanol is the molecular basis for folk medicine use of cilantro as an anticonvulsant. And when we tried E2-dodecanol, we can see that we can greatly increase the latency to first seizure in mice. Tridecanol, which is one of the ones with one more carbon, does not do it. And when we block with a KCNQ2-3 inhibitor, XE991, dodecanol has no effect. Okay, so that's a chemoconvulsant story I'm going to tell today. Now moving on to rosemary. When you go and buy a house in University Hills in Irvine, they very often plant rosemary in the front yard. It does really well here, originally from the Mediterranean and Asia. Does really well in our nice marine environment. You all see the nice marine layers in the morning, and then that burns away and you get sun in the afternoon. So I told my kids, go out and pick that rosemary, be very careful, get the leaves, get the flowers, and let's see what happens, right? So we passed it over some KCNQ channels. It's been used, rosemary has been used for lots of different neurological disorders in folk medicine, so we thought we'll try it. And amazing, this is really kind of amazing. It doesn't do, sometimes we see inhibition, sometimes not. So, but in terms of voltage dependent for Q2, we don't really see anything. KCNQ3, rosemary, the carnosic acid from rosemary hyperpolarizes the voltage dependence by minus 62 millivolts at 100 micromole. It's a huge shift, especially considering it does nothing to KCNQ2. It does something to Q5, which is not much of a shift up here, but you see this persistent current down at minus 120 millivolts. Q2, Q3, pretty much nothing. The Q2 effect dominates there. And then KCNQ3, 5 channels, you get this nice hyperpolarization again. There's carnosic acid. Rosemary itself does similar things, but carnosic has this huge effect. It's a catecholic diterpene. So while we were doing this work, I was talking to this very talented assistant professor, Kevin Bayer at UCI, who just found in his cocaine addiction model in mice that Q3 and Q5 get downregulated in cocaine addiction. It was a match made in heaven. So we tried it. They perfused carnosic acid in the brains of mice, and long story short, they found that basically the percent of mice acquiring cocaine addiction in this lever bar model was way, way reduced. So there's no cocaine addiction acquisition there. So we're in the preprint stage of this right now. It's in revision. We're doing some of the more behavioral studies, and Kevin is doing this lab. But this is going from a plant compound to an effect on potassium channels and addiction model, combining the two and finding that this actually might be a small molecule that could help relieve cocaine addiction. So we're very excited about it. Because of the effects on Q5, we also tried rosemary extract and carnosic in vasculature, and rosemary extract and carnosic each relax mesenteric arteries because they open KCNQ5, and that's just a brief summary slide showing that result, which we did in combination with Tom Jeps in Denmark. All right, so we had cilantro, we've had rosemary. Then we had, talking about the vasculature, we hypothesized that some of the herbal medicines that lower blood pressure or vasorelaxants might activate KCNQ5. So this is just a very brief summary of that work. We tried 10 antihypertensive or hypotensive plants that have been used over the years, thousands of years actually, things like lavender, fennel seed, Sophora flavescens, which is a kushen in Chinese medicine. And those and others all activate KCNQ5, some of them massively, and hyperpolarize the membrane in oocytes expressing Q5. Whereas plants that are not shown to be antihypertensive in the past, such as spearmint and tarragon, do not do anything, and wheatgrass do not do anything to Q5, don't hyperpolarize the membrane. So we think KCNQ5 opening is a unifying mechanism by which anti-hypertensive herbal medicines relax blood vessels and lower blood pressure. KCNQ5 has lots of different famous molecules in it, such as metrine, oxymetrine, but aliperine, the alkaloid, is the one that opened KCNQ5. So you can here see a 9-fold increase in current at minus 60 millivolts, whereas the other ones don't do much. As you can see, when you add these three together, you get a little bit more of an effect, which I'm not showing here. When you take aliperine and apply it to rat mesenteric arteries, it KCNQ dependently relaxes them, so that kind of closes the loop. And aliperine is the first known KCNQ5 selective among the KCNQs activator. So you can see the other Q2s and the other Q2, Q3, Q4, Q2, Q3, nothing happens, but aliperine opens nicely. Even up to 1 millimolar, you don't really see much of an effect on the other ones. And the EC50 for aliperine opening of Q5 is 390 nanomole. So it's fairly potent. We think like carnosic, which I didn't show you, and like dodecanol, we think it still binds down in this very deep pocket, judging by docking and by mutagenesis studies where you can get rid of the effect by mutating this arginine. How the selectivity, however, is created because all of the KCNQs have this arginine, we are working on. And we have some results, but I don't have time to show them today. All right, so I'm going to move on to a different potassium channel family. We started collaborating with a pediatric neurologist recently called Rich Sidlow, who's at Madeira Hospital, which is kind of in the center of California. He came to us and said, we will refer to you. Could you look at we have a patient with a KV1.1 or KCNA1 gene mutation, and she and a mother have episodic ataxia. So we tried that L155P mutation in oocytes again. If you have homozygous, basically both copies mimicking the homozygous situation, which doesn't usually happen, you get 0 current. And you get less than 50% current when you have the heterozygous kind of mimic of one wild type, one KV1.1. So it's a loss of function mutation like other episodic ataxia mutations. It was the first one known to be in the N-terminus. So okay, great, we had a nice sort of case report on that. But then we thought, we tried in the past to find synthetic drugs that activate and rescue these KV1.1 mutant channels. We'd found synthetic small molecules in the Sigma catalog using kind of virtual docking, again with SwissDoc actually, that were able to increase currents through wild-type KV1.1 channels. They never worked on the mutants. So we went to indigenous medicine, we went to Native American medicine practices, and we searched the literature and databases. And we found that Kwakwaka'wakwa First Nation in the Pacific Northwest actually had 3 documented ataxia therapies that they used: bladderwrack kelp, nettles, and Pacific ninebark. And the Kwakwaka'wakwa people have an incredible culture They're an amazing story behind this First Nation. I encourage you to check it out. They have incredible art and everything, but they're also very good at botanical medicine. So we mashed up these 3 plants. We tried them on our L155P mutation, on our E283K mutation, which has been published by another group from an Italian family, and 3 other mutations. The 3 other mutations, these plants did nothing. But if you look at E283K on Pacific 9 barley's 1 in 50, we get a nice rescue increase in current. And if we've overlaid the wild type value there to show that here's our mutant, in green is our nettle extract in this case, so it rescues the wild type function. So pretty incredible. They also were able to enhance L155P, not to the level of wild type, but they were still pretty good at enhancing the currents and left shifting the currents. So pretty amazing, right? So from plants that were used by Native Americans for ataxia, we actually found that they work on some episodic ataxia mutants. What are the compounds? Well, tannic acid was one of the compounds. Tannic acid is never going to be a great drug for this kind of thing, probably because it's a bit sticky and it gives you kind of other side effects, but it's good for topical application. But gallic acid is in those 3 plants I mentioned, and it's actually pretty good at rescuing L155P. Here's the control, and the more gallic you get more of a nice left shift, which means they open more at negative potentials. It was really good. 1 micromolar gallic acid was really good at opening the E283K mutation and restoring the wild-type voltage dependence. So gallic acid is available as an over-the-counter supplement, so it could be taken potentially in the future once all the safety stuff has been worked out. Rian worked out that because gallic acid doesn't open 1.2, but it opens 1.1, he realized that there was these different sequence differences, and that together with mutagenesis and docking, we found that the binding site is in the voltage sensor, and then with Alfredo Freitas, who's right here in the middle with the stripy shirt on, just to point him out. So in Doug Tobias's lab doing molecular dynamics, Alfredo found that there's the gallic acid stably bound to the voltage sensor. Here's the mutant with the triple mutant that I just showed you that mimics the 1.2, which is insensitive to gallic acid. And you can see there the gallic acid kind of is not stably bound, and it does this little fly past at the end, which I like. So basically showing that it's the gallic acid sticks to the voltage sensor, and that's probably how it rescues these channels. More recently, Rian has been working on finding other molecules that do this, and I'm not going to show you the molecule or the tree, but he's found a molecule from an evergreen tree, and all the green ones are mutations that so far he's tested. They've all been at least partially and sometimes dramatically rescued by this new compound, which is incredible, and he's working on doing these other ones right now. So this one looks to be even better than the gallic acid, and we're very excited about it. And we're we have a mouse model, E283K mouse model that we've developed, so we're going to keep working on that because obviously we want to test to see if these compounds such as gallic acid and this new one do something in vivo, because then it will be even more exciting. But the fact that the indigenous peoples of North America were able to harness the power of plants without any molecular knowledge and use them to treat some of these disorders is quite remarkable. And we're just figuring out kind of the mechanisms. They're the ones who discovered this, right? So more recently, away from the supermarket and my front yard, we've been going and collecting plants we have permits to collect in national parks, mostly in California, but also in the Caribbean, and also in the UC Reserve System. So more recently, we did a 1,444 plant extract screen. So each one of these is a different species of plant. There's some duplicates. And we did a double screen with a contract research organization just to speed things up. So basically by thallium flux, KCNQ2/3 activation, the beta activators go this way. And then also KV 1.3 inhibition, because if you can inhibit 1.3, as Mike Hale and other people have shown, you can prevent T-cell activation, so it can be anti-inflammatory, and this is well known at this point. So a lot of these plants were able to inhibit very strongly, actually, in some cases, KV 1.3. So we thought, this is kind of interesting. There's a subset of plants up here that do both, right? They activate KCNQ2/3, which can have analgesic properties as well as the anticonvulsive property, and also could be anti-inflammatory as well. So just to show you, we collected places like Yosemite. There's me sampling from a riparian habitat in Muir Woods. There's me in Kelso Dunes in Mojave Desert, where, believe it or not, there are actually some little plants. There's the Zyzix, which you'll see if you drive from LA to Vegas. You'll see this weirdly named place, Zyzix, and there's a salt lake there, so I collect around there. That is Catalina Island, I believe. No, it's one of the Channel Islands, actually, one of the Channel Islands. And then this is, I collect in Buck Island, which is off the coast of St. Croix in the US Virgin Islands as well. So I've been collecting more tropical plants as well. So just that right-hand top box I showed you, right? So here we have some of the plants from there. And very interesting, I think, is that this one here, Hamamelis virginiana, is witch hazel. So witch hazel is used as a topical anti-inflammatory analgesic, and it came up as a Kv1.3 inhibitor and a KCNQ2/3 activator. We know the binding site, we know the molecule, don't have time to go into it today. Fireweed, Caminera angustifolium, which is here. It came up twice from 2 different places I sampled it from. This one is also used as a kind of a topical analgesic anti-inflammatory. So, and then we have other things like California walnut here, an ice plant that Rian found. I won't tell you how, when he was in the forest one day. And then we'll go through Eriogonum, which is wild buckwheat, comes up a lot. This is the bladderwrack kelp again. So you can see we have literally hundreds and hundreds of plants to go through. This is just one subset. We're also interested in the plants that activate one but don't inhibit the other as well. This is Rian Manville. I've talked a lot about him today. Phenomenal, unbelievable electrophysiologist. He's done so much hard work and thoughtful and careful work. This is him. We went to Santa Rosa Island. We hiked for 10 miles with 50-pound packs. So this is him just getting his feet in the water. We camped on the beach for a couple of nights. We had to move the tent because the tide came in. But you can see he's just relieved to soak his feet. It was a really good trip. And here's Rian and Ryan Yoshimura, who I see in the audience up there as well. This is Boy Deep Canyon, which is part of the UC Reserve System, where we're collecting plants in the desert there. So thank you for listening. I just want to summarize some widely consumed food plants. Botanical medicines can harbor metabolites with quite potent properties, and also there can be some isoform selectivity. Although we found that you can be selective for KCNQ2 over Q3, but then you can go and activate a completely different potassium channel. So there's sometimes not really much rhyme or reason to it, but we're sorting through that. Alloparin from Kushen is the first reported KCNQ5 selective opener. Native American ataxia medicines, like the one I show you, offer a novel solution to rescuing function of episodic ataxia 1 mutant channels. Gallic acid that was in the plants that they found to rescue some of these mutants or these ataxia issues is available over the counter as a supplement. So maybe these families could, we could have some N=1 or limited studies or clinical trials to see if supplements like this could actually be helpful. And then we are finding out that these Californian and Caribbean plants are a complete treasure trove of case channel modulating metabolites, and so we're going to keep working and collecting. I want to thank all the people who helped with these studies, especially Rian, who showed up a lot. Rian and Katie, who graduated last year from my lab, there they are in Yosemite, collecting plants up at 8,000 or 9,000 feet. And this is another place we collect, Mojave Desert. We've been there a lot. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, and there's tons of different plants there that have to adapt to very harsh environments. I'd like to thank Ryan and Dirk, who are both here, and I'm not sure, I didn't see Rian, but he was here the other night. So Dirk is our excellent chemist who helps make derivatives of all the small molecules and do other stuff. Ryan handles mice, rats, and does electrophysiology and everything else. He comes up twice. I don't know why, don't want to make anyone jealous. Angeli was a wonderful master's student who was working in our lab as a technician while she was doing that, and she got a nice paper out as well from the lab. Our collaborators in Denmark, Tom Jeps, our chemistry department collaborators, including Alfredo, who's right here, Richard Sidlow in Valley Children's, Kevin, who's a wonderful neurobiologist, Susan Samueli, Integrative Health Institute, who give me some funds, and they're kind of trying to change how we pursue and deliver health in the United States. Kwakwaka'wakw First Nations, because I mentioned their discoveries, U.S. National Park and UC Reserve for the permits I get to collect plants in their beautiful places, and then the NIH for funding, obviously. And thank you very much for your attention.